Hey folks, this is Jason Lewis, the producer of the From the Shadows podcast. I just want to remind you about our website, FromTheShadowsPodcast.com. We have a Facebook page. We would appreciate it if you like and follow. Also, join our discussion group on Facebook called After the Shadows. We have a Twitter feed. Please follow us on Twitter. It can be found with @podcast_from. Follow us on Instagram at From the Shadows Podcast. We have a YouTube channel. Go to the search bar at YouTube and put From the Shadows Podcast, and please subscribe to that channel. We are also on the Odyssey Radio Network, and we can be found there at odyssey1.com. We're still on the traditional podcatchers that everybody loves to listen to us on. We get a lot of feedback, so please rate the podcast and communicate with whether you're on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Google Podcasts. We're there, and we appreciate it when you leave comments for us. We also have a Patreon page. It can be found at www.patreon.com/FromTheShadows. You can receive books, stickers, coffee mugs, and special content just for our Patreon subscribers. Check it out for yourself and see what packages that we have to offer. Well, that's all I have for you right now, folks, and thanks for being a part of the From the Shadows podcast family. So with that being said, let's get this episode started.
Hey, welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove, and with me, as always, is the super producer, Jason.
Greetings, everybody.
Hey, so Jason, before we get started with this episode, there's a couple things I want to tell all our listeners. First of all, we have a new Patreon.
Yes,
his name is Andrew Maines. So welcome, Andrew, and thanks for being a Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, we just did a really cool interview that we're going to put up on Patreon with Marshall from Missouri, who shared a UFO experience with us. So if you're not a Patreon,
good story too.
If you're not a Patreon member, get over there, sign up. It'll be in the basic level of patronage that you can check out this listener story. And also something kind of cool happened this week, or whenever this episode's coming out, I don't know. But you could check out me and the we'll call him the artist formerly known as the Judge. Made an appearance on the Dave Glover show on his it's called Paranormal Tuesday on KMOX News Radio out of St. Louis, which is kind of cool. They had reached out to us and asked us if we'd come on and be part of their show, and supposedly they had a good time. They asked us to come back. So if you want to check out that interview, you can go to our From the Shadows page or After the Shadows page on Facebook, and I put up a link to that, and you can hear me and the Judge blowing a lot of hot air. I mean, it's only 25 minutes. I mean, what else are you going to do for 25 minutes? Spend your lunch break with me and the Judge on the Dave Glover show.
While you guys were having fun being interviewed, some of us have to work.
Well, that's the way it should be.
The job Jason. Of a producer is never done.
That's the way it should be. So speaking of Patreons, our guest tonight, he was one of the first people to sign up and become a Patreon on our page. So he has a soft spot in our heart because he's also a returning guest. So a lot of people have asked for this guy to come back on. So and no, sorry, it's not Stacy Brown, but it is another guy from Florida, the author of Eerie, Creepy, Freaky, and maybe Disgusting, Lazy, and Overpriced Florida are coming out. I don't know. Maybe those are books to come out. But a great author, great storyteller, Mark Muncy is back. How's it going,
Welcome back, Mark?
Hey, gang, with an introduction like that, how can I not be happy here? So that's fantastic. This is why I plunked down my hard-earned cash, a couple bucks a month, just so I can keep that Patreon tag going for you guys. So.
That's right.
Well, we appreciate it, and we
do.
And tell you what, you'll love the UFO story that you get to hear sometime next week.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, that's, between my inbox filling up with, reports, there are select podcasts, particularly you guys, that I love to support. And, and hey, that's, links to stories that I get to put into my books. So,
right.
You can't go wrong with that.
So, Mark, what has been happening since the last time you were on the show? What do you got to regale us with? Because, I mean, you are one of the best storytellers. So what do you got?
Well, as you guys know, I've been working on Eerie Appalachia. We're finally getting out of Florida for our next book. It'll be out from History Press sometime this fall or winter. Got delayed a little bit. There was this thing called, the pandemic that happened, which delayed a few of our trips. So we were unable to get some photos we needed for the book, and a couple interviews got delayed. But that worked out to our advantage because now we've got to add some extra stuff that we weren't going to include originally. So it's going to be a little more comprehensive. We're very happy about that. I've got some interviews still pending, so there might be some last-minute additions. Plus, I'm hoping that whole Pentagon report comes out, and our chapter on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base might be able to use some of that last-minute footage on that. That whatever comes out of that, the whole government fiasco there. Yeah, so we've been doing that. We've just been taking it crazy, and of course, my inbox fills up every day. We were talking a little bit right before the show, and just last week was probably one of the best weeks in a while for Florida headlines. We had the baby dinosaur seen in South Florida. You got to love that. And if those haven't seen that security footage, oh my gosh. And we've seen every report from it's either an iguana to a Doberman or German Shepherd with a leash, and it could have could be a peacock, or something because Florida, and it's security camera footage. And this is why, we all have trouble identifying, is that a Bigfoot on that footage? Who knows? It's a security camera. It could be anything,
including a baby dinosaur. Including a baby dinosaur.
It does. When first initial look at it, you got to say, it looks like a freaking, Calamimus or a velociraptor running across this lake's backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. It does. I encourage everybody to go. They can find that on your page, right?
Our page, or if you just Google Florida or baby dinosaur, you'll spot it in a second. It's everywhere on YouTube. But when that's the least interesting story you get in a week, because the same day I got the police in Naples issued an APB. They're wanted for questioning a witch who defrauded people out of $100,000 in West Palm Beach and Naples area. And then, that's always fun.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it's like, so wanted for witchery, and then the last one was a lady just yesterday, before we recorded this, attacked her Uber driver as a vampire and tried to bite him on the neck, and the driver had to be rescued by witnesses as he pulled over. So, and that's in St. Petersburg, my hometown. So you gotta love that. So. When dinosaurs are your least impressive thing for the week, you can't go wrong.
That's fantastic.
So do you open like your email with much trepidation, or just with it's like a kid on Christmas morning? Like, oh my God.
I love it. I mean, cause you never know. Like I said, there's always something. There was, alligator, usually it's alligators in parking lots. My favorite was an alligator tried to go into a Publix the other day, but they told him he didn't have a mask on, so he had to go somewhere else. That's great. That's great news. And that's, I get all those forwarded, but then I get my stories, people, hey, I've got some unusual paranormal activity, and, can you point me to the right team? Or, I had a horse farm approach me up near Ocala. And, in seriousness, they had an issue. They're not allowed to say who they are because they stable some famous horses there and some Olympic riders. But they had some unusual activity where there was knocking on doors and some strange stuff in their apartments that they rent out. And outside, they had on their camera what looked like strange, portal-like activity, some strange lights and some unusual things. And then there was smudges appearing on the walls that they couldn't identify. And you throw all that in, and they're finding Bigfoot prints outside their windows. And they asked not to be publicized. They asked not anything, but, they want me to get them in touch with teams. And that's exactly what I do is since I'm a journalist here, I've got contacts with all the paranormal teams and all the Bigfoot teams. So, I was able to get a couple people out to them, and they're doing investigations. They're keeping it on the down low, but I got to tell you, the stuff they sent me is gold. I wish they would let us, publish it because, wow, incredible stuff.
Mark Muncy, the Tease. That's what your nickname, the Tease. I mean, so you mentioned, so there's like portal activity, it looks like there's something coming, like a light forming and something coming through it, or
yeah,
what?
Exactly. It's like you'll see the footage, the security camera, nothing, and then this small speck of like what looks like an orb, just probably, it's in a horse farm, so it's dust or something you think initially. But then it turns into this geometric pattern that looks like something out of, what you would expect a sci-fi movie to look like on this security camera. And it's full of light. And then it expands and gets bigger. And you're like, okay, well, is it just dust orb flying at the screen or something? Some sort of glitch? And then it fades out, and then there's this shadow shape, and then it's gone on the next screen. So, and these are, motion camera timed, motion sensitive timed cameras. So there's nothing there for a while, and then suddenly that happens. And
so
then,
are the animals responding to this, or that's outside the barns and buildings and they're not?
What's scary, it's inside the barn. The animals, hard to tell what the animals are responding to, but what's scary is they rent the apartments in those barns to writers. And that's what they're hearing. The writers are hearing strange noises and having strange encounters. And and then when they go to look at the security camera, that's when they see that stuff happening. And, it's pretty amazing.
It sounds like, and did I hear
you want to talk about?
Yeah, then you throw Bigfoot in on top of it? I said, then you throw Bigfoot in on top of it.
Bigfoot tracks, on the grounds, and the team we sent out was one of the independent Sasquatch research teams with David Sidoti and his team, and I think Stacey Brown is part of them too. They were able to recover some tracks there, and they're trying to and then we've got them teamed with a paranormal team. Which is funny because, that's like oil and water in a lot of places. The Bigfoot teams don't like the paranormal teams. Paranormal teams don't like the Bigfoot teams. But here they're working together because it's just such a strange collection of phenomena. And I'm like, if you would just let us publish this, you guys would be the next Skinwalker Ranch. I promise you.
Well, I gotta break it to you. They probably make more money off horses than they ever would be in the next Skinwalker.
Sadly, yes.
Holy smokes, that's incredible. I mean, that's incredible stuff. I mean,
it's amazing, and that, and like I said, that's just that's the main case that I'm helping out with right now. And again, I'm sad that it may never get published. This is probably all I'll be able to do is talk about it here on the radio without mentioning names. So we're doing that, but we're also still knee deep in Appalachian interviews and stuff to set up for our next book. So we've gotten, we're deep into Mothman lore and Indrid Cold and all these other things, and they're tying in to Florida more and more, and that's what's scaring me. Is like how, what? There was we're looking into the Flatwoods incident, and of course, the famous sighting there. The day of that event, a plane is shot down, they say, or crashes here in Florida, and it was covered up as a training mishap. And we've done some research into it, and it looks like now that this plane may have, had an encounter with some sort of craft, and that's why it went down. And they blacklisted it, pretended it didn't happen. And that's the day of the Flatwoods incident. So it doesn't take much to consider, okay, something flying over Florida gets hit here in Florida by one of us and then crashes, not too far north. I mean, if you're flying a few hundred miles an hour, you're going to you're going to crash probably somewhere in West Virginia.
And they're probably flying
Flatwoods,
a whole different,
legit. Instead of, where it's always been considered one of those, Project Blue Book considered it, hoax. But they marked anything where something was on the ground, where there was an actual landing, as a hoax immediately. And that's what we think now. Shoot, this may prove that it isn't a hoax, that something did land there.
Yeah, that is just, you're killing me with the whole book not coming out to Christmas. You know that.
I'm sorry.
You kill it. I mean, we've been waiting on this. When you get, and for those who didn't hear the first time Mark was on, when you mentioned the Indrid Cold name,
yes,
it totally blew us away.
It threw us for a loop. Yes,
and we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for this book to come out.
That's just it. Yeah, Indrid Cold ties into the Crestview sighting in Miami, and then this. It's like, what a freaking bunny trail I got down on, here doing my next Florida book, which is about aliens in Florida. And suddenly I'm suddenly back up in West Virginia and Kentucky and Ohio because they tie together. And it's just, how is this possible? And I've had lots of incredible interviews. Do you guys want to talk some Men in Black? Because I got an interview for you about Men in Black.
Listen, when do we not want to talk about Men in Black? I mean, that's a better. I mean, of course we want to talk Men in Black. All right. What do you got?
All right. So, talk to this one writer, right? Who was he's a science fiction writer. He's out in California, and he got in touch with me after one of my appearances on another show, and he's like, "Hey, I heard you're looking into this. I've got a story for you." And I'm like, "Okay, well, you're a science fiction writer, so I've got to kind of take it, with a grain of salt." And he's like, "Yeah, I understand, but no one believes me when I tell them this, so I've got to tell you this story." And I'm like, "All right, go for it, man. I'm here. I'm all ears." And he says, "Okay." So he was having trouble sleeping. Right, just could not get sleep for a while, and he's like, "All right, I'm going to take some pills and help me sleep," and takes those and winds up sleeping for like 2 days, and now he's behind on a deadline, right, because he'd lost a couple days. He's like, "Okay, no more sleeping pills for me. I've got to get this thing done," but he's still feeling the effects of the sleepiness. So this night he takes, a pill to keep him awake, just some caffeine tablets. And he's like, I don't want to go back to where I'm not sleeping again. So he's had irregular sleep for about a week. And so now he's keeping the awake pills. He's burning the midnight oil to finish this deadline. And he goes to sleep after he's done. And he's laying in bed, and in walks a smiling man in a black suit into his bedroom. And the man says, "It's time." And so he gets up and he puts on a black suit in his closet and follows the man out. No questions asked. He doesn't know why he's doing it. He just follows this man. They walk out of his apartment. They walk down the street. They take a couple turns. They go to this other apartment building. And then they walk up about 3 flights of stairs. And then they knock on this door. Now it's about 3 a.m. And they knock on this door. And a lady answers. And she's in her bathrobe. And she's like, "Yes." And the two men stand there, him and the smiling man. And the smiling man tells her, "Hey, we know you saw a thing in the sky last night. Do not tell anybody about it. This is very important for your safety. Keep it to yourself." And the lady goes, okay, I promise I won't tell anybody. And they're like, good. And then they close the door, and then the man walks him back to his apartment, and he goes back into bed, changes out of his suit, lays back down, wakes up the next morning, right? And he's like, what the hell was that? And he goes to his closet. He doesn't even own a suit. He's like, where did the suit come from? What am I doing? And then he's like, what happened? What was the craziest dream I ever had? But his front door is unlocked. There are footprints, muddy footprints, inside his room. His shoes are covered in mud from where he's walked. He is a little unnerved by this, of course. So he tries to walk the path to find that apartment building. Can't find anything, right? Can't find where she was, can't find the apartment. He's freaking out about this. He comes home, he starts Googling, and sure enough, there was a meteor sighting that night. And then they were saying that it was a rocket test that had gone bad in some of the stories, but then some stories were saying it was a meteor. And he's like, well, there's already discrepancies here. And he's like, whoa, what if all those people, see the men in black, and they always talk about how they seem weird and out of it and all that. What if the men in black are using, some sort of mind control, make you go at night and wake you up and use you as just muscle? So anybody could be a man in black. And it's like, what a crazy story, right? And he's like, yeah, and nobody believes me because I'm a freaking writer. And he's like, I swear, that's what happened. And I'm like, no, I'll take it. I'll take your word on it. And so,
I got to be honest.
What's your opinion on that, guys?
Well, listen, I got to be honest. That is the last thing I would expect. Like, even if you were making up a story, that's not very sexy to say, yeah, they dragged me out of bed, threw me in a black suit, and I went and I was a man in black. I mean, it's an amazing thing to think of because it's so brilliant if that's what the men in black are really doing. But just for the average person to make that story up, it is so fantastic that it would be very hard for the normal person to even, like, it's almost too fantastic to even say, yeah, that really, that could have happened.
Yes.
What I'm saying?
Right,
that's the genius. That's almost the genius of it. Is that it's
he's convinced the only reason that he remembered it was because the pills he was on to stay awake was why he was only half asleep when it happened.
Wow. But so one, if one of the people, if one of the men in black is, whatever, an alien, okay, and you need to have a little bit, so you're not both scary. Well, yeah, go recruit somebody from off the street, and say, hey, come on. You're especially if it's somebody that is under the influence of something to where they're more susceptible to just go along with it.
Sort of like a forced,
and he kept telling us
a forced good cop, bad cop thing.
Exactly. And he was telling me how the guy just always seemed to smile, and it was like he was talking in his head. And that's when immediately goes back to Indrid Cold.
Bingo.
The smiling man. And then, here we are already discovering Crestview. He was one of the government men investigating, the Crestview incident. So now we've reached out to Tanya Derenberger to try to get her interview, an interview with her and her thoughts on this. She's still dealing with, health issues. So we haven't been able to get in touch with her up close, but we've sent some correspondence. So, but anyway, so there's yet another oddball tie for you, that just, wow. It just made my head explode when when you hear stuff like that. It's like, and then this writer, he's like, I can't put it in a book because, it's not my type of writing. And, it's interesting to, that I'm going to be able to use that. So.
That's wow. And to think, and here's the crazy thing, is to think that maybe Indrid Cole is the same. He's the same guy the whole time. Like,
Yeah.
maybe he's the same guy that visited the science fiction writer. Like
visited old John Keel and visited this guy. Yeah, exactly. It's like wow. Just mind blowing.
Yep.
That is crazy. That is crazy. It'd have been something if he could have found that lady. Like, what's the time frame that this took place?
This would have been 2008.
Okay.
So this would have been not too long ago, but
so
long
there's
enough.
So how great would this be? Because if you put that in the book, this lady happens to read it. Because think about this, she witnessed a UFO. Okay, and it's kind of like what we talked about. Marshall, who we mentioned at the beginning, he has been on this quest to find out what it was he saw. Okay, especially because everybody he said something to, it's a government experiment, or it was an airplane, or it was just your imagination. But that's what happens if you have an experience like that. You go on this quest for knowledge. You want to know, even if you can't tell anybody that I was visited by the Men in Black. You're going to want to find out everything you can about the Men in Black and about UFO experiences. How cool would it be if what would you say, the book would come out about December, about January 15th, you open up your email, and you're not going to believe this, but I just read your book, and I was the woman.
That's the stuff we love.
Yeah.
When we do the tours, here's a Florida history monster. This is one of our Florida cryptids, and it's not in any of the books because it was one of the ones we were just starting to investigate. This is a story called the Squallies. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're a Florida Everglades monster. They were spotted mostly in the 30s and 40s when the Everglades weren't really traveled a lot. But they were seen as little, small, men-like things, but with pig heads. They looked like pigs walking on 2 feet, and they carried spears, and they seemed like almost tribal. Some of them were seen wearing like loincloths and stuff like that. And people thought they were some sort of government, experiment gotten away in World War II or something strange like that. But they were seen back in the 30s, but most of the sightings were post-World War II, which would have been around the time the Everglades were used as, testing bases for radar and stuff like that. So there was a lot of secret projects going on down there, Camp Murphy and a few other things. But anyway, so these weird monsters, right? So, it's just one of those little stories in the back of Florida history. And it was one of those ones we couldn't find a lot of anecdotal, more than anecdotal evidence about, so we didn't really write about it much. But when we started our tour for Eerie, Florida, I think we were mid-Freaky, Florida at this point, the second book. And one of these days I'm going to run out of adjectives, but, not anytime soon.
That's why at the opening I said maybe disgusting Florida, lazy Florida, overpriced Florida. I mean, come on, there's all kinds of...
I can just do 2 books on just crazy politicians in Florida. So, my favorite was the guy who rode around on a chariot being pulled by alligators, and he was a congressman from St. Augustine. You gotta love that.
Oh, brother.
And,
Just
but that was how he made his speeches. That's how you make a speech, man. That's how you make a political speech. But back to the Squallies, right? So we would talk about them and stuff like this. I started getting emails about a creature in the Seminole Woods, which is a little north of there. And it's a giant guy. And this was about 2000. So this is, like a long time later. And this was called, it was being called the Boar Man of Seminole Woods. And he was this big boar-headed guy that was, all muscular, again, kind of, looked like a human with a pig head. Classic, we've heard that urban legend all over the country now. But this guy, again, tribalist. He had like a big spear. And immediately I'm piecing it to the Squallies, who were 3 or 4 feet tall. And
they're
now
all
there's this
grown
big
up.
thing that's
They're all
like 6,
grown-
8 feet
yeah.
tall. Yeah, immediately I'm thinking one of them's still around and he's giant. Well, we talked about it. And I was, when we were doing the book tour, I would ask whenever we'd get in that area, I'd say, has anybody heard this story? Because I need to know more about, the Boar Man of Seminole Woods. I only had one, guy told me about it. And we were at a Comic-Con in Orlando, big one called MegaCon. And I was doing one of my panels, and I was just asking anybody, hey, have anybody heard anything on this? And, this guy stands up and says, hey, I saw that in college just a few years ago. It jumped out of a river and scared my girlfriend and me and all this. And, of course, half the audience is just kind of smiling at the guy and all that. And I'm like, well, good. I'd like your information. And across the room, this other guy stands up and he's like, holy crap. I thought I was the only person who ever saw that thing. And he was in college at the same time as this guy. They didn't know each other, but they both lived in the same area. So we now had a lake to go investigate, and we were able to pull it together. And that's the sort of thing. People just keep this stuff to themselves, and then suddenly, it just takes that right connection. And like I said, I would not be surprised if sometime that lady calls and says, hey, that is true. That did happen.
Well, that would be fantastic because hey, personally, I hope she listens to the show and hears it before the book even comes out.
Yes.
That
way I can put it in the book. Yeah.
I love that kind of confirmation.
So back to the thing with the pig head. What have you? I mean, I've never heard.
It's near these 2 apartment complexes, and there's a big lake in between them. Seminole Woods. It's near Daytona area of Florida, and these 2 apartment complexes have had several reported sightings of this thing all throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. There haven't been any recent sightings. So we think it may have moved on. But then we traced it backwards down towards the Everglades. Sure enough, in the 70s, we found some sightings a little further south and around Jonathan Dickinson State Park, which also has some great, stories as well. There's a ghost there called Trapper Nelson. And that's a fun story. We'll sidetrack there at some point. But Trapper Nelson was basically the epitome of Florida man. He was this guy who had come from out west as a wrangler and a failed rancher. He comes down to Florida and he buys a bunch of swampland, right, with his brother and this other guy. And then his brother and the other guy get into a fight. His brother winds up killing the other guy. So his brother goes to jail, and Trapper Nelson's left with all these woods. Now, why he called himself Trapper Nelson is he starts catching animals and opens up his own zoo on this island. And he becomes the Tarzan of the Luxahatchee River. He starts inviting celebrities up from Miami. They start coming up in droves to spend a night with the wild man. He swings out on vines while they're coming up in their canoes to get out to his island. He's got alligators. He's got all kinds of snakes and other things he's caught. And the women freaking adore him. He's got, just lined up outside his door, basically, of his tent. He's living off the land.
I'm
He's
taking
doing all
notes.
this crazy
I'm
stuff.
taking notes, by the way.
Yep. This is how you want to do it. He gets recruited by the Army, drafted into World War II. And when he comes back home, he reopens his zoo, but this time the government starts encroaching on him, telling him he needs to, make bathrooms and he needs to do all these important things if he wants to keep doing things he wants to do. And they finally shut him down. And then he flips on a dime and becomes this recluse and starts chasing people away. And he turns into this scary figure, Trapper Nelson. He wears these overalls. He carries a big shotgun around. He starts putting stuff on his property, stay away, danger, landmines, and crazy stuff like that, because he's just tired of, people. And at this point, his brother gets out of jail, and is supposedly coming to get him because he's upset that his brother testified against him. And he's found dead. He suicided by shooting himself in the stomach with a shotgun.
Ooh, man.
And people think it's, more of a coincidence. Suddenly his brother gets out and suddenly he suicides. There's a lot of crazy stuff. But what makes this Florida awesome, right, is when I get a call from a lady who swears her mother told her that her dad was Trapper Nelson. So that she had a fling with Trapper Nelson.
She was one of the ladies outside the tent.
Yep. Now, the thing is, she was born 4 years after Trapper Nelson died.
Whoa.
So do some math there.
Yeah.
I don't even have to be very good at math. I can figure it out.
You can figure that one out, yeah.
I can figure that one out.
So, but she swears her mother told her that the ghost of Trapper Nelson was her father. So, crazy stuff. You gotta love Florida.
Yeah.
So, and then Squallies are in that same area. So, you gotta love it.
So maybe were the Squallies a product of the Trapper Nelson Zoo?
I mean, never put that together.
Yeah, I mean, were they in his original zoo, and he's like, you're done.
That would have been, if he'd had Squallies, that would have been the ultimate tourist attraction there. So, but yeah, if the ladies out there listening wants to look up what Trapper Nelson looks like, they'll be impressed with the gun shows on most of his photos. So yeah, he was a decent looking man. So.
And it takes
before he went all crazy and started carrying a shotgun around.
It takes a real man to admit that another man's a decent looking man. I'm just going to tell you that.
Oh, heck yeah. I understand.
Listen, it sounds like Florida is just never. It's a nonstop.
Oh yeah.
Smorgasbord. I mean, and I'm looking up Trapper Nelson right now. I can see why the ladies are outside his tent. I mean, he's man. Every picture, he's got an animal.
Yep, a snake or an alligator or his dog. Did have a pretty dog, and but
no shirt. He's not wearing a shirt. He's never wearing.
Never wears a shirt. He wears his little Tarzan pants and. Usually got a knife at his belt. I mean, he is exactly when people hear Trapper Nelson, they're picturing Grizzly Adams. I'm like, no, think Tarzan and maybe more, Bring Him Back Alive Buck from, if anybody remembers that damn series or.
Oh, jeez. Wow. Bring Him Back Alive Buck. I don't even remember that show.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was in the post-Indiana Jones craze when every television station was trying to cash in on Indiana Jones. It did Tales of the Gold Monkey and Bring It Back Alive Buck were the two I remembered.
Holy smokes. So what, going back to this book that we're so eagerly anticipating, so in your research, has another side, kind of like a side shoot come out of it that you're like, okay, this, I'm investigating all this stuff for this book. That is really interesting, but it doesn't necessarily go in the book. I'm going back to that. Has there been anything that has come up that you've really?
Yeah, there's a whole new ending to the book. We did the major stories, of course, and we did our ties and where we're tying it into certain other things. But we came up with the end. We weren't going to include it, but now thanks to Zilay, we get to include this. There's going to be a whole back section of the book, which we're calling Holler Monsters. which is all these great legends that every freaking valley has their own monster, right? Has their own cryptid or has their own legend. Everything from
all in West Virginia too, right? It's all in West
Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio. So all the Ohio Valley, and some Tennessee and a couple North Carolina. We're trying to mostly hit Ohio Valley, and the publisher was just like, it just can't be called Eerie Ohio Valley. That sounds bad. So that's when it became Eerie Appalachia. So, which is fine. But I told him I'm not doing the entire Appalachian Trail because that would go from Jersey Devil all the way down to Mississippi, and that's a lot. And you're only letting me do 60,000 words. So unless we want to turn this into a 10-volume set from Time Life books, I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Wouldn't that be great though?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be great? I'd bring back Time Life books for that. But this one though, so these are going to be short, quick little stories. And again, these are things I intend to research more in the future. And I might make a freaking encyclopedia of them because it's incredible, some of these stories. One of my favorites, I can't remember the name of the town, but there's a rat man. And he's basically this guy wears typical cloak, but with a rat face. And they were describing him to me, and I kept thinking Plague Doctor with all the pandemic imagery going around. It was like Plague Doctor came to mind. And he is a guy, you would go to him, and he would be able to cure what ails you. And all you had to give him was something shiny, like a crow or something, just like he would collect shiny things. And if it wasn't shiny and sparkly enough, he wouldn't take care of you and he'd disappear. You could only find him on very rare nights. And he would wander this town. And this town actually has a small little altar to him on this little back alley behind their courthouse. And, I will reveal the name of that when I can find it. Shoot, I didn't think I was going to talk about it, but it's in my notes. So it's like, what? And that's this little back hills town in Kentucky, and they follow this guy to this day. There was another one. I love this one. This one was called Old Pete, and
that just sounds like a terrible liquor that you could buy back
then. Old Pete. Old Pete is the name of the guy's dog. It's not even the name of the guy who this story is about. The guy he's basically the ultimate trickster type character, right? He wears sunglasses, bald head, just looks like he's dressed as a farmer, or possibly a lot of people describe him as maybe like off-duty cop, if that's the look. If you're looking for a look here,
okay.
And he has this giant dog that's half as big as him, and he offers to take care of problems for you. So he's like the ultimate fixer type guy, right? Very Better Call Saul. But the price you pay is you have to give him your family pet for Old Pete. And if you don't pay, he comes and gets you. Old Pete comes and gets you and gets your pet.
Man.
So, and the story goes that if you don't pay, not only does Old Pete come and get your pet, he comes and gets your kids. So
For crying out loud.
Very dark.
Old Pete sounds terrible.
That's a steep price to pay.
Steep price to pay to, somebody was stealing some water from your well or something. That's what the original story we heard was that somebody was using their well water without permission. So that's when they called on the man and Old Pete to take care of it. They just call him the man. So I like Old Pete.
I gotta be honest, growing up with well water as a kid, anybody who wanted to come take it was more than welcome because it's
welcome to it. Yeah,
they could have
that
it all.
Sulfur taste is just not there for you, huh?
Well,
no, but that's just it. It was like every story, every town we went to looking for one ghost story or one myth or one urban legend. And then suddenly we'd find these. And it was like, what am I going to do with all these? And I'm like, originally they were just in a little notepad, where I was just writing them all down. And then I'm like, maybe I'll reinvestigate these later and all this. But now I'm like, oh, these are just too much fun. These are great little stories. So they're just going to go in little chapters at the end of the book, just quick little, half-page summaries for each of these.
Well, I want to ask you, Mark, so because you're, obviously do a lot of investigative journalism and you're doing a lot of research. And I mean, I think we talked about this before in some of the Florida stuff, is there's always like that kernel of truth or a reality to these stories. Now they may go on to become, get a life of their own and be exaggerated a little bit, but like what is it about these little towns that have these really terrifying, like Rat Man and Old Pete? Like, where do you think that comes from? Like, what's the original, story behind those that evolves into?
I'd say 90% of them are cautionary tales. They're, don't go out in the woods because such and such will get you. And that's mostly because something got somebody at some point, or the kid went missing, or the man disappeared, or, fell down a well, stuff like that. A lot of them are very much, that be careful or this will get you. A lot of them are also, just stay on the straight and narrow because, don't seek out vengeance because, this guy will, exact a toll. And that's, how badly do you want to hurt that other person? Are you willing to lose your favorite dog, because, you want to, upset somebody? But then we do find those nuggets of truth. One of the creatures we investigated in Kentucky was called the bench leg. The bench leg of Goble Ridge. It sounds like something out of South Park, right?
Yeah.
And this is an amazing story. And this, I have to say, is personal because this is near my land, my family land in Kentucky. So I had heard this legend growing up, and I had to investigate it. So this one was the story. The monster I had been told was this cow with the head of a human and a wooden leg, and it glue in the dark, and it would chase you if you were out late or if you'd done something bad. It's like, what a crazy story. So, I heard that as a kid. It's like, how does that stick with me, but, and other things don't, but it was there because it was magical. It was like, what a crazy story. Well, then you start researching the legend, right? As I'm doing this now, I'm like, I'm going to go investigate the bench leg because I heard that story when I was a kid. I think my uncle told it to me. And then you start looking into it, and it's like, okay, so I get the real story, like how it the real in-depth story. And the in-depth story is it was a peddler in the late 1700s, early settlements in the area. Country is just founded. Cumberland Gap, has just been cleared. And this guy would go out, and he was basically, the traveling Walmart, right? He would fix your pans and sell you stuff and trade goods. He was more of a tinkerer, panhandler type. And some men robbed him. And the story goes, he's dragging his little, ox cart, and he resists, breaks off a tree branch and starts swinging back at him. And so they do kill him. They overpower him. And then to hide the killing, they kill his cow. And then they throw all that into one burial pit with the stick. And then he comes back. And that's why he's this mixed thing with a wooden leg and that's the big stick he was using to fight. And then the human head and the cow body. And it kind of makes this weird sense, right? Because it's like, okay, now he's seeking vengeance on people. And you're like, what a crazy story. And if you look into, there's not really like newspapers in that area at the time, except for some, a few stories and stuff like that. But sure enough, there's reports of a man who was murdered in that area from the late 1700s. And so, of course, this story probably came from that. And that's when you go, okay, there's a nugget of truth in this.
There's
when I'm out on those woods, I'm looking for something glowing in the dark. Yeah, that sounds like a cow.
And you're right. You're right. There's the cautionary tale. Don't get caught out there at night, because the same thing that happened to that guy could happen to you. And his ghost, is out there haunting I could see that. I can definitely see that.
And that's where you go, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
It seems like with a lot of this folklore like this, there's always a grain of truth.
Somewhere.
Yeah,
you gotta look
somewhere
hard
along
sometimes.
the line. Yep.
I'm trying to figure out Rat Man, but I'm sure I'll find it.
Yep.
Like I said, I keep thinking Plague Doctor, somebody wearing a mask of some sort.
Yes, I get you on that for sure. But it's weird, like, to go to the extent, unless it was a joke, but to have like almost a ceremonial altar somewhere in town.
Yeah, no, I think that sprung up recent, because it was definitely not an old thing. I think this was, maybe in the days of, creepypasta and all that in the last 5-10 years, there's probably been a revival of this guy. And that's why it seemed, why it's there now and it wasn't there, 20 years ago. So I think that, with the advent of social media, with the advent of podcasts and things like that, and people just loving this stuff, I think it's bringing back a new mythological age, like a golden age of these legends and stuff. So
of storytelling. It's a great new age of storytelling. And when you hear people who say, man, I love the podcast because I can just for 45 minutes to an hour sit there and hear somebody tell a story, and I can put myself in it, or and just have fun, or because some people it's fun, and some people it is like we said, who have experiences and don't know where else to turn. It's a whole different thing. So you run that whole gamut of entertainment to self-help, so to speak. It's like therapy for
comfort.
Yes,
it's comfort.
Yep.
Jeez.
There's definitely comfort. And that's just it. I get some people who get mad at me when I talk about some of these crazy things, like, a cow with a human head and a wooden leg. They're like, I'd rather, we need to stick with the real stuff, like skunk apes and really prove that they exist and all this. And it's like, and I understand that, because I'm with the real paranormal investigators. I go with the real, teams from Finding Bigfoot and stuff like that. I go with, these teams on all these stuff, and we find real evidence. There is stuff out there we don't understand, but you've also got, if you're going to look at that stuff, you also have to take this stuff a little bit, and you got to have some fun with it too. You got some of these stories. Yes, they're insane and they're a lot of fun, but you still, there may be a grain of truth. Yep. And so you do have to look at them. So, so for everybody who goes, oh man, I wish they would have just talked more about Bigfoot. It's true. I've got plenty of skunk ape stories and Bigfoot stories that I could tell you. I mean, that's part of the book's going to have the Ohio Grassman and some other stuff like that. We've got a bunch in West Virginia, some sightings that I have some amazing encounters to report. And of course, we talked the Grafton monster and even Mothman sightings to modern day. And so, that's all in there, but you also got to look at these things. And some of these are just,
Well, to please our listeners, do you have a good skunk ape Bigfoot story that maybe didn't make it in the book, or one that you've been holding back? And that's how we'll close out the show for all of our listeners that love that. If the Men in Black and the Rat Man and the dinosaur in Florida wasn't enough for you, we got the goods. We got the real goods.
I've got an encounter. Now, this was sent to me very recently from a ranger in the Myakka State Forest. Now, Myakka State Forest down here in Florida is just south of Tampa Bay, near, kind of west of the Sarasota area, for those who are, looking on a map, it's a huge, national forest. It is, it's big. And one of the rangers there said that he got a report of a sighting and went out on his four-wheeler to go look for what he thought was a bear. And, there were several sightings of it from some campers nearby. They thought it was a bear. But they did say it was a little big. And he knows there aren't many brown bears in that area. There is a possibility of black bears in that forest, but not what he would consider a brown bear or something. So he was curious what it was. He thought maybe it might even just be some hunter in a ghillie suit, and they're not supposed to be hunting this time of year. So he goes out on his four-wheeler to find this thing. As he's driving along the path nearby where they had seen the sightings, he goes and he sees out of the corner of his eye a creature. He described it as looking like the thing from Harry and the Hendersons. Literally said that. He's like, he thought it was a movie thing. He thought it was maybe a prop. He said it looked so, giant and brown and everything you would expect a movie caveman, but covered with hair. And he just drove right past, didn't think about it for a minute, and then he's like, what did I just see? The smell hits him, and that's what shocks him back into reality. He smells this foul, decaying smell, and that's when it hits him. Oh my God, skunk ape. That's what they're seeing. And he turns and he stops. He's like, did I daydream this? And he turns around and he sees it loping off into the swamp. And he goes back, now he's snapping out of it and he starts to ride back towards it. And he said by the time he got back, it was barely, 100 yards past it before it all clicked. And he turns around and he gets past, and all he can do is smell it. He can see no sighting of it. No, nothing. And he does call for to people come out to investigate. And he reached out to me. I reached out to the local team. They came out and got some excellent castings in that area. He is now firm believer and is patrolling that area as much as possible. They have scheduled a controlled burn in that area, and he is trying his best to fight it because he doesn't want them to destroy this, this area just for at least until he can find more evidence. But he went from a skeptic, and just a basic ranger to now firm believer, and he logged it on one of the databases that log encounters. So we've got a fresh sighting. This was from 2019, late 2019, and he is still keeping in touch, trying to see more about it.
And he hasn't seen or any more, or hadn't got any more reports of anybody seeing it or found any more evidence.
Nothing since that, and but they did get some good tracks. They also reportedly found some juvenile tracks in the area, so it may have been a family on the move, which may explain some of the, bear sightings in the area. And it's, Myakka is famous because they did have that one photo a number of years ago, I think right around 2000, the lady who thought she saw something in her backyard took pictures, and there's that big silverback looking gorilla thing in her backyard that some people are still trying to debunk to this day in camp. So Myakka is a hot spot, and I would not be surprised if there was a family of them out there.
Jeez,
that's fascinating. Oh gosh.
And I always wonder if, like, you always think the park rangers, they gotta know something. But maybe they don't tell. Maybe they just don't tell the new guys or the younger guys, or it's only the higher ups that kind of have that knowledge that there's something out there. Because really, if you heard that report and you knew that there was something out there, why would you go out there looking for it? You just be like, yeah, okay, I know. I'm not going out looking for it.
Well, that's his comment to me was that, once he got back and told them again, a couple of the old timers went, "Oh yeah, we've had reports, but we've never seen one." And he's like, "Well, I have now." So, now he's like, it's exactly, and he said it didn't click in his brain that it was real when he saw it. And I think that happens to some people. I've heard this more than a couple times where people have seen it and it just doesn't make sense. Mostly with like dogman sightings. People are like, that just looks something out of a movie. What did I see? And then they go, oh my God, what did I just see? And it's something else that triggers it. Like with him, it was the smell. With others, it's the noise or something like that. Once it hits two senses, suddenly it clicks.
Well, think about it. You're not expecting to see something 7-8 foot tall out there. That doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem real, I mean, just like seeing something with a pig head or a rat rat man.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff just doesn't seem, real. So think about this.
It doesn't make sense. Was it a dream? Am I daydreaming this? Am I imagining this?
To blow everybody's mind. Think about how much stuff we have seen in our lifetime that we've just glossed over because it didn't seem real.
Yeah, it just didn't register. Yeah.
So there, I heard somebody's head explode. Like, what? Maybe that was true.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about, people see ghosts different ways. Some people see them solid, some people don't. And it's like, so how do you know you've never seen a ghost when it could look as solid as me and you walking down the street, and you just wouldn't tune it, just don't tune it out. You just don't realize that guy doesn't have a shadow or something like that.
Absolutely. Like one of my experiences seeing a ghost, I thought it was a person. I thought it was a real person.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I asked, like, hey, where did that and they're like, the other person that was in the room is like, well, there's nobody else here. I'm like, no, wait a second. There was just a little girl smiling at me. And they're like, no, there's nobody else here. So if I hadn't asked, I'd have just thought I saw some kid, So then you think, well, that looks so much like a real person, and it interacted with me by smiling and nodding its head. Well, then how many other entities have you come across?
Yeah. Have you seen and aren't there?
Yeah, like how many times have I passed somebody at Cedar Point or at an Ohio State football game that really wasn't there? Someplace where there's thousands of people, and that because I'd take more comfort if there was thousands of other people around when I saw it.
Instead of just you in the room with that feeling behind you that there was somebody in the room with. Yeah. Exactly. Rather it be there. Yeah.
Yes. Oh boy. Well, Mark, I mean, listen, I know as soon as this episode comes out, we're going to get flooded with the same kind of response that we did the last time you were on. Like, man, that guy is great. And then Stacy Brown will say, hey, when are you having me back on? But we got plans for Stacy. Don't worry.
Yeah. But don't worry. Stacy's great. I love working with him. So he is the bomb. So.
Nothing's better than then I'm out on the mail route and it's a long afternoon and all of a sudden I get this text. Hey man, hey brother, what's up? Hey man, what's going on? and then it's like, what's happening? And then it turns into like this, this is what's going on, man. And it's like, but that's the best thing about doing this is getting to meet such cool people and keeping in touch with everybody and becoming friends and being able to exchange stories and say, hey, did you hear this? And hey, did you hear that? And so because it's,
hey, that's just one of the best parts about it. It really is. You've just encapsulated it.
It is because I know people listening are like, man, these guys got these great. They're just everybody's real people, man. Everybody's real people, and it just happens.
100%.
Mark Muncy's got a great email address to receive this crazy stuff that he receives. So I'm glad somebody's taking it all in and disseminating. So Mark,
and if you have a story you want to tell these guys, or email me at mark@eerieflorida.com. It's like the least hidden internet address in the world.
Absolutely.
and I will read your story and I will get back to you. And if you and it's not just Florida, we take everywhere. It's eventually going to be mark@eerietravels.com, but we're just getting that set up. But if if you got something for us, drop us a line there. If you'd like to get one of our books at Eerie Florida on any of the social medias, or eerieflorida.com. And my lovely and talented wife and chief illustrator will draw something fun in there for you if you order books from us and direct, and I'll scribble some words of wisdom in there for you. And you can just follow us on any of the social medias at Eerie Florida. And thank you guys for having me on again. It was awesome, as always.
Hey, look, you blew us away just like last time. I didn't think that was possible.
And I'm so dying to read this book.
Oh, I know.
Then be able to tell everybody how great it is. I'm dying. But
I will get it out to you guys as soon as I can. I promise. So.
I'm sure it's gonna be worth whatever the wait.
Oh, yeah.
So thanks again, Mark. And I can't wait till the next time.
No problem. You guys keep it spooky. And I'm so glad to see the show taking off as big as it was. Glad to be here for the early days, and I'm gonna ride it to the end, man. So it's all good. So
well, join the club. We're riding it right down to the end too, whenever. so all right, man. Thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you later.
Take care.
You have a good one.
See you on the other side, gang.
Yep.
All
Take
right,
care.
Bye.
Yep. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.